right. Hey, guys. Welcome to GC 365. This is day 242, and it's August 30th. And kind of excited to be here. I'm Pastor Dutch. I'm the Assistant Director of the Hope Creek Charitable Foundation and the Director of the Mill Creek Food Bank. And this is...
his better half. My name is Julie, and today, August 30, is kind of a special day for us. We were married 24 years ago today.
Yep.
I didn't think 24 years ago that I would be sitting here. Thought it would be on a beach somewhere. No, just kidding. That'll be next year, 25. But yeah, no.
Yeah,
happy to be here.
So thanks for joining us for our 30th anniversary talk. Today we're going to talk about, and we're going into Job 34, 35, and 36. And in Job, if you know the story about Job at all, or if you don't know, I'll kind of just bring you up to speed. Job, Satan kind of goes to a meeting with Jesus, and he says, well, have you considered my faithful servant Job? And Satan goes, yeah, well, he's only faithful to you, and he's only good because you've made him so successful and you give him protection. And so God allows the challenge and says, well, you know what? That's not the case. He's a good man. He loves the Lord. He loves God. And you can test him as long as you don't kill him. Mm-hmm. So he goes through some tests and some trials. And here we are in verse 34, or in Job 34, it picks up where Elihu basically comes in. He's this young kid, basically. He comes in after three of Job's friends. And if you know the story with Job, the whole thing with being tested, he's very wealthy. He has a large family. He has 10 kids. He has a huge amount of livestock. I think it's like around 11,000 different animals he's got it, and livestock. And in this test, Satan then begins to take away things from him. He basically, the house collapses and kills all 10 of his kids. His livestock all dies. He ends up suffering with boils and starts having health issues. And here's this guy who's been completely and totally faithful to Jesus or to God. And now he's basically had his whole life ripped from him. His wife's begging and pleading him not to, would you just tell God, forget it, we're done here. And his three friends come in and say, hey, here's, they're very sad for him and comforting him, of course, because he's lost all of his family members. But during this process, he starts saying things about God and really questioning God in a way that it's not kind of following along really with Scripture. And so Elihu, this young guy, comes in.
Well, let's just think about that for a moment. We've all been at that place where tragedy has struck, and we question that. We question why. Why did this happen, God? I am faithfully serving you, and I will continue to faithfully serve you, but I am really struggling here with my faith. And, as much as we'd like to say that we would never question or become angry at God, I think Job finds himself in this place where he is, he's been faithful, and yet he is struggling because he is now suffering and he is going through this grief. And, we all have those friends that do come to us, and as they're, in an attempt to comfort and help us, they may not offer the most legit wisdom.
Yep.
They might, as Job's friends say to him, you're in this situation, Job, because you've sinned, or you don't have enough faith, or this or that. And so we're at a place now in Job 34 where Elihu comes in, and he is younger.
Yeah.
And he's, oftentimes we wonder, in our youth, can God use us? Well, we see here how God is using Elihu.
Yeah, and I can kind of relate to Job in a degree. I didn't lose all my kids, thank God. I have two beautiful daughters and they're still doing well. But I have lost 11 family members have died before me, and it's been difficult, and the grieving process is painful. And if you know us at all, we love to ride bicycles, and we've done the Seattle to Portland bike ride a number of times where you're riding a 209-mile ride on a bicycle in one day. And so health has been pretty good, but 4 years ago, I got hit by a truck walking down the sidewalk and by a delivery truck in Snohomish. And my life for the last 4 years has been very different. It's been a struggle. And there's been times when I ended up with a traumatic brain injury. And so I can talk about God pretty well without getting stuck, but a lot, if you're around me at all, you'll probably see I'll get stuck. Things happen and it just takes me a minute to get there. But it's been hard because that blow to the head, I cry easy, I get angry easy. That's just, I'm a different person. So when you talk about Job, the grieving, I get the grieving because I've lost a lot of family members. I get the grieving because a year ago, they told me that if I got to 3 years and my brain still wasn't there, I wouldn't get better. And so I went through a grieving process then as well. It's hard.
And it's a very natural part of the grieving process as you walk through this, and you don't think you ever would be there. And I would hope that we would all be like, God, I will never ever question you, but you do. It's a part of that natural part of the grief process.
And it's tough, and that's kind of what Job has done. So Elihu comes in and says, hey guys, here's the deal. And hopefully we all have that one friend that can just come in and say, you know what, time out. Your perspective is skewed here because Job is grieving. If you go through the grieving process, you'll know. We call it stupid brain for pregnant moms. Grieving people go through the same thing. And by the way, today is National Grief Recovery Day. So if you know of anybody who's hurting, give them an extra hug today. August 30th is a National Grief Recovery Day. And so it's hard. You go through stupid brain. You kind of go through what I've gone through the last 4 years. It's frustrating. But he comes in and says, hey, look, guys, here's how it is. And he sets the three guys straight, and he set Job straight. If you look at verse 10, he says, listen to me, you who have understanding. Everyone knows that God doesn't sin. The Almighty can do no wrong. And in verse 12 says, truly God would not do wrong. The Almighty will not twist justice. And so that's kind of what a little bit of the claims that Job was making. And he's saying, no, time out, hold on. And he really, this young kid, I mean, Julie knows what it's like as a young person to...
Yeah. I grew up in a Christian home, and part of what I experienced in high school as a 15-year-old, I went to the UW had this Maranatha, I guess it was a house down there across from the street from the campus, and I went through what they had was their Glad Tidings course, and it's a course designed to teach you how to witness to every different faith and every different religion using scripture. And as a 15-year-old, I was one of the youngest, probably the youngest in the class, and the leader would play the devil's advocate quite a bit and would call on you and would, be that person, and you had to quickly be able to respond using scripture. And so it was quite an ordeal, something that I studied and learned, and then we would have to go down on the University Ave and do street witness to people.
As a 15-year-old.
As a 15-year-old, young girl, and I was wondering, well, how God could use me, and he did. And, I often think it is the children that God uses. Sometimes it's like they just say it like it is, it's like, you need Jesus. And, and 2-year-olds, God uses every age. So.
And me, on the other hand, I subscribe to the scripture that God will use the foolish of this world to confound the wise. So anyway, kind of going on with Elihu, he comes in and says, okay, here's the deal. And he's setting him straight in verse 17. He says, could God govern if he hated justice? Are you going to condemn the Almighty Judge? He's like, really? You're condemning God? This isn't okay, Job. He says, he doesn't care how great a person may be, and he pays no more attention to the rich than the poor. He made them all. So basically he's saying he loves us all. He loves everybody. And for you to say that, because Job is kind of almost not really bad-mouthing God, but just saying things that aren't correct to Scripture. He goes on to this is where the tough love part comes in for Elihu. For Job, is verse 35 says, Job speaks out of ignorance. Ouch. His words lack insight. Job, you deserve the maximum penalty for the wicked way you have talked. That's tough. That's tough love coming in. Verse 37 says, for you added rebellion to your sin. You show no respect, and you speak many words against God.
Yeah, and it's like that anger that of not knowing. It's like Job does not know the conversation that God and Satan have had. He doesn't know that God has his that God is in control of the situation, and
He's not seeing the big picture.
He's not seeing the other side. He's just seeing what we all see when we're going through, tragedy. It's like we don't see that God is only wanting to bless us. But if we could all just be that faithful as Job turns to be.
Well, and it's tough because it's a difficult situation where he's in, and I get it that he's grieving, and so he's probably not thinking clearly, and Elihu's just helping to set it straight. He goes on to say in 35, verse 13, but it is wrong to say God doesn't listen, to say the Almighty isn't concerned. He said, but you're talking nonsense, Job. You've spoken like a fool. So here he is coming in, this young kid, setting the three friends straight, to saying, whoa, time out, guys, this isn't okay, and telling Job, this is how it is. And hopefully we all have that friend that can be straight up and straightforward with us and really tell us how it is, so that we really get it. So that basically, in a nutshell, what's going on with Job. In Job 36, 27 says this is kind of one thing that spoke to me in terms of how God is and seeing the big picture, because you talked about he doesn't realize there's this behind the scenes thing going on with God and Satan's testing him. He doesn't get it. And he doesn't also know everything and all the blessing that's going to come his way. So in 36:27, it says, he draws up the water vapor and then distills it into rain. The rain pours down from the clouds and everyone benefits. And everyone benefits. He doesn't see, all he sees is the rain. And that's the way we are a lot of times, right? We just see the clouds. We see the storm. We don't see the benefit that the rain's bringing. We don't see the benefit that the storm has brought into our life.
Right.
Sometimes that storm's used to clear things out. And that's what happens oftentimes in life. The storm clears things out, and then we've got this different perspective. All of a sudden things begin to grow. It's a benefit to all of us. Verse 31 says, by these mighty acts he nourishes the people, giving them food in abundance. So it's just God's way of coming in the big picture. We have finite minds. He's got the big picture.
Yeah.
And then moving on to 2 Corinthians, did anything stand out to you, Joel? In verse 5, this is one thing that stood out to me, is verse 5 says, you see, we don't go around preaching about ourselves. We preach that Jesus Christ is Lord, and we ourselves are your servants for Jesus' sake.
Yeah, I love that. I love the fact that they'll know that we're Christians by our love. I've often had people come up to Cheyenne, our daughter, and just, it's like there's a light that shines in her, and it's just Jesus in her. And I think that when you are just faithfully following Jesus, and there's just a presence, there's something. I had a friend in college. It's like we didn't know that either of us were Christians, and then we came upon each other at church one day, and we're like, we knew it. I knew you were a Christian. It's like there was just something about you that you just stood out. There was a light that shined through you. And so
I'm reminded of that song, they'll know we're Christians by our love, by our love. I can't sing, sorry. I didn't break a mic. Anyway, verse 6 goes on to say, for God, who said, let there be light in the darkness, has made the light shine in our hearts, so we could know the glory of God that is seen in the face of Jesus. Yeah. And it's kind of like you were saying, letting that light shine. Verse 7 says, we now have this light shining in our hearts, but we ourselves are like fragile clay jars containing this great treasure. This makes it clear that our great power is from God and not from us.
Yeah, and then going on that next verse, we are pressed on every side by troubles, but we are not crushed. And that kind of brings back like what Job is going through. It's like he was pressed on every side, but he was not crushed. God would now not allow that to happen. And in the end, he blessed him abundantly.
Yeah, and it goes on there to say we are perplexed, but not driven to despair. We are hunted down, but never abandoned by God. We get knocked down, but we are not destroyed. And I'll be honest, this last 4 years has been a difficult journey, and there have been times I have felt almost driven to despair. There's been so much struggle and frustration at times that it's been tough. But that's the thing, is it's not me who can handle it. It's God who
absolutely
really makes it work.
Yeah. Dutch and I have both been through the grieving process over and over a number of times with losses in our life. I lost my first husband. You've had a number of losses. And while it's tough and you wonder, where are you, God? I would never, ever think, how could I have done this journey without God by my side? He has been there over and over. I have felt his presence in the middle of the night, when I'm by myself, when, just, I couldn't imagine what it would be like without God there. And I have felt his amazing love and comfort in the darkest moments.
Yeah, it's at those times when I've actually felt peace in the middle of the despair, where I knew that wasn't me. That was God giving me that peace and comfort.
Yeah.
Going into Proverbs 44, was there anything that for you really stuck out?
Verse 44.
For me, one thing was on verse 5. It says, only by your power can we push back our enemies. Only in your name can we trample our foes. I do not trust in my bow. I do not count on my sword to save me, because you are the one who gives us victory over our enemies. You disgrace those who hate us. So it's kind of going back to that whole thing. God's got our back. He's there with us.
Yeah. The commentary that I found on this was that through the words of the psalmist, the people recall how God enabled their ancestors to conquer and inhabit Canaan in verses 1-3. And then in the next verse, they remind God that he alone gave Israel victory, and the people praised him accordingly. So he's there. He's there with his people. He did not abandon him. Just like Job was never abandoned, just like us, we're not abandoned.
He's got our back, no matter how much it rains,
what we
like
go
in
through.
Job's life and all that loss. Could you imagine losing 10 kids? That's crazy. That's crazy to me. But in all of it, God is there. And you'll see as we read forward through Job in the coming days in GC 365, just really what happens and what an incredible story that turns out to be. That's the bigger picture you'll see. In Proverbs 22:10, verse 10, the thing that really stood out to me was, throw out the mocker and the fighting goes too. Quarrels and insights will disappear. And
well, this of all the verses, there was kind of a common theme. Well, this one was kind of just a outlier. Like, okay, you want a good working, functioning team, get rid of the one that's causing the problem. Okay, you're out. But yeah, so
watch out for the troublemaker. Yeah. Verse 11 says, whoever loves a pure heart and a gracious speech will have the king as a friend. So it's kind of the dichotomy, if you will, of verse 10. You've got the troublemaker, and then you've got the person who truly loves the Lord and is a bright light, and that is somebody that's encouraging. And we all need those people in our lives.
Well, and that kind of brings back to like Elihu. He was very sincere. He was, he followed God. God directed him to speak to Job. He patiently waited for the other three to speak to Job. And then he came in and was
set them all straight.
Yeah, but he did it in a very sincere and respectful way.
True.
He didn't like come in and just like, he was very respectful in how he approached Job.
Respectful, but very honest.
Yeah.
I mean, that as a friend, sometimes it hurts to hear the truth, but we all need that friend that will tell us the truth. And so that's basically brings us to the end of GC 365 for today. So we thank you all for joining us. If you're behind, don't worry about it. Just keep on keeping on. And if you haven't started yet, that's okay. Pick it up and start, because you can start from today going forward. I found it really is helpful and helps kind of keep me in a peaceful place more so. Also gives me a few tidbits and nuggets of wisdom, I would hope.
And just a reminder that you said today was National
Grief Recovery Day.
And there is a grief share through the.
Yeah. Shameless plug here. We both co-facilitate in the Grief Share, and there is a Grief Share group coming up in September 13th, I believe. But be watching for that. If you've lost anybody at all in your life and it's been difficult to work through,
It's a great program.
It is really good program. Highly recommended.
Yeah.
Thank you all. Have a great day.
Bye.